"You're not part of this family anymore." That's what my daughter-in-law said. Right there, in my own kitchen. The words hung in the air like smoke from something burning. I stood by the sink, holding a plate still warm from the dishwasher. The smell of roasted chicken lingered in the room. My son didn't look at me. He just stared down at his phone, scrolling. I wanted to speak, to ask what she meant. But my throat locked. It was like the house itself had turned cold. Even the ticking clock on the wall sounded harsh. They'd come for Sunday dinner, something I'd done every week for years. But that day, something was different. My son's wife kept talking over me. She rearranged my dishes, told me how I should decorate. How the curtains looked a bit outdated. I smiled politely, the way I always do. When I tried to ask my son if he'd like more tea, she sighed and said, "We don't need her hovering all the time, do we?" And that's when she said it. That I wasn't part of the family anymore. He didn't defend me. He didn't even raise his eyes. So I turned off the kettle, put the cups away, and quietly excused myself to the garden. The air outside smelled of rain and old roses. I sat on the bench my late husband built years ago. The paint chipped, the wood creaking under my weight. And I whispered to myself, maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong anymore. That night, I washed their plates, one by one. No one thanked me. When they left, my son hugged me briefly. A hug that felt more like obligation than love. When the door closed, the silence of the house felt heavier than ever. I stood there, looking at the empty table, the crumbs, the half-finished wine glass, and felt a strange kind of ache that had nothing to do with age. I didn't cry. I just stood still, listening to the faint sound of the refrigerator hum, and the rain beginning to fall outside. Have you ever felt like a guest in your own home? If you have, tell me in the comments. And if you understand how this kind of silence feels, please, like this video and stay with me for the rest of the story. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was quiet, the air still cool. For the first time in years, I didn't make breakfast for anyone. I just sat at the table with my cup of tea, watching the steam curl upward in the pale morning light. I thought about her words again, "You're not part of this family anymore." They echoed in my mind like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. But then, something inside me shifted. I looked around the kitchen, the same one I'd scrubbed and polished for decades. Every corner had a memory. Every mark on the wall had a story. And I realized, I didn't need their permission to belong. This was my home. My life. My story. That week, I made some quiet changes. I went to the bank and updated the account that still had my husband's name on it. The young woman at the counter smiled when she handed me new papers to sign. Her kindness felt like sunlight. I changed the locks, not out of anger, but to remind myself that I had the right to feel safe in my own space. I started cooking smaller meals, just for me. Simple things, vegetable soup, baked bread, tea with honey. For once, I ate slowly, without rushing, without trying to please anyone. Days turned into weeks, and something beautiful began to happen. The garden, which I'd long neglected, started to bloom again. I trimmed the rose bushes, planted herbs, and found a quiet joy in the smell of soil on my hands. I even found an old box of letters from my husband. In one, he'd written, "Don't let anyone make you smaller, love. You've built too much to fade away." I read that line 3 times. It was like he was right there beside me. And for the first time since that painful Sunday, I smiled. I still missed my son. Of course I did. But now, I missed him without breaking. That's when I knew I was finally beginning to heal. Sometimes, strength doesn't look like shouting or fighting back. Sometimes, it's just choosing peace and taking back the small pieces of yourself they tried to take away. Have you ever had to quietly start over, not to prove anything, but to remember who you are? Tell me in the comments. And if this part of the story touched you, please like and share it. Your small gesture means more than you think. One rainy afternoon, months later, I was in the garden, trimming the last of the roses before winter. The air smelled of wet earth and lavender. Then I heard a car door close. When I turned, my son was standing there. Older, thinner, his eyes uncertain. He didn't say a word at first. He just looked around, as if seeing my garden for the first time. I didn't know you still lived here, he finally said. I smiled softly. Where else would I go? He lowered his head. I heard what she said that day. I should have said something. I just froze. The silence between us was heavy. But not angry anymore. Just full of years we had both lost. I poured him tea, the way I used to. He wrapped his hands around the cup and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." I didn't cry. Not this time. I just reached across the table and touched his hand. "It's all right," I said. Sometimes it takes losing something to remember what truly matters. We sat there for a while, listening to the rain tapping on the window. There were no big speeches, no dramatic apologies. Just a quiet understanding. And somehow, that was enough. After he left, I stood by the window and watched him drive away. The garden shimmered in the soft light. The house, once filled with noise, now felt peaceful. Not empty, but whole again. I realized then, I hadn't been written out of the family. I had simply written a new chapter for myself. And when I whispered goodnight to the house that evening, I felt something warm in my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was freedom. They once said, "You're not part of this family anymore." But they were wrong. I never stopped being family. To love, to life, to myself. Because dignity isn't something they can take. It's something you quietly carry. Even when no one else sees it. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe and turn on the bell. I post new ones every week.